Good evening. This is Atheist History Week, and I'm John Rafferty, President of the Secular Humanist Society of New York and a proud and active member of New York City Atheists, which produces this show. Each week at this time, we look at the week's anniversaries in the history of free thought: atheism, agnosticism, secularism, humanism, skepticism, rationalism, what have you-ism. We discuss notable people, the famous and the not so, who were born or died or achieved something significant in regards free thought during this calendar week. And we look at significant events that took place this week in history: court cases, publishing events, religious riots, burnings at the stake, and other faith-based fun and games. Let's start the examination of this, the third week in May, with a look at one of the most famous freethinkers of the 20th century, maybe the most famous, Bertrand Russell. Bertie to his friends, who lived to be 97 years old and kept annoying people the entire time. He was born May 18th in 1872 in England. A good world needs knowledge, he said, kindliness, and courage. It does not need a regretful hankering after the past, or a fettering of the free intelligence by the words uttered long ago by ignorant men. What he tried to do throughout his life was to add to human knowledge and to inspire kindness. What I wish at bottom is to become a saint, Russell actually once said. He didn't mean a religious saint. He launched headlong into a life of radicalism in his 40s as a pacifist who opposed World War I. Pretty good idea at the time. It was a smelly war. There were no good guys in that war. He liked to recount his experience at prison, where he was sentenced for pacifism. He refused to serve in the military. He campaigned, tried to convince young men not to serve in the military. I was much cheered on my arrival in the prison, he wrote, by the warden at the gate, who had to take particulars about me. He asked my religion, and I answered, agnostic. He asked how to spell it, and remarked with a sigh, well, there are many religions, but I suppose they all worship the same God. This remark, Russell said, kept me cheerful for about a week. Russell was very badly used in the United States. He was appointed to the philosophy department of City College in 1940, but there was so much agitation against him for his anti-war, pacifist, and free-thinking atheist ideas that a New York attorney won a suit to void Russell's appointment to City College. He described Russell as, quote, lecherous, libidinous, lustful, venomous, erotomaniac, aphrodisiac, irreverent, narrow-minded, untruthful, and bereft of moral fiber. Probably all true except for the narrow-minded and untruthful. He was also reviled in the 1950s in the United States during the anti-communist era of hysteria in the United States because he was a peace activist, and the professional right-wingers, the professional anti-communists in America couldn't stand the idea of a peace activist in the United States. So he was denied speaking engagements, and he was dismissed as naive. Now, in fact, I do believe that Russell was naive about the intentions of the Soviets, but he was naive in the sense that he was trying to work for peace. In the faith of a rationalist, he which was broadcast by the BBC, he said, "Cruel men believe in a cruel God and use their belief to excuse their cruelty. Only kindly men believe in a kindly God, and they would be kindly in any case. I believe that when I die I shall rot, and nothing of my ego will survive. I am not young, and I love life, but I should scorn to shiver with terror at the thought of annihilation. Happiness is nonetheless true happiness because it must come to an end. Nor do thought and love lose their value because they are not everlasting." Bertrand Russell wrote in What I Believe in 1925, which was reprinted in his most famous book, Why I Am Not a Christian. When he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950,
1950 års litteraturpris utdelas till Bertrand Russell. Och därmed är högtidligheten i Stockholms konserthus slut.
he uttered a wonderful line. "Never try to discourage thinking," he said, "for you are sure to succeed." Bertrand Russell, freethinker. Lorraine Hansberry, the playwright. A young African-American woman who died, unfortunately, at the age of 35. She was born May 19th in 1930 in Chicago, the daughter of civil rights activists and intellectuals. "What happens to a dream deferred?" Langston Hughes, the poet, wrote. "Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun?" Lorraine Hansberry used that line as the title of her most famous play, A Raisin in the Sun. Which won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award and was loosely based on her own experiences. When she had been 8 years old, her parents bought a house in a white neighborhood where young Lorraine witnessed a racist mobbing and her parents' resulting civil rights case. She married Robert Nemiroff in 1953, whom she met on a picket line while protesting discrimination at NYU. In A Raisin in the Sun, which starred Sidney Poitier in both the play and the film version, the play's central protagonist is Benitha, an eager young woman determined to fight social convention and go to medical school. Benitha is a self-avowed atheist who gets slapped by her mother for admitting it. And her other plays, Lorraine Hansberry's other plays, include The Sign in Sidney Brewson's Window, about a Jewish intellectual. While it was playing on Broadway, she was hospitalized with the cancer that would kill her before her 35th birthday. And finally, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black was posthumously adapted from her writings and was produced off-Broadway in 1969. One can only wonder what more she would have given us had she lived. Dead of cancer before her 35th birthday. Lorraine Hansberry, born May 19th. Many of you, of course, know Lorraine Hansberry. Someone not so well known is Stephen Girard. Born way back in 1750 on May 20th. A philanthropist and a free thinker who settled in Philadelphia in 1776. And he loved to say that he began life with a sixpence and went to sea as a cabin boy. And he opened a store in Philadelphia and eventually became a wealthy store owner and ship owner. And he became a local hero in Philadelphia during an outbreak of yellow fever in 1793, where all the rest of the rich were running out of the city. He opened his pocketbook to help, volunteered as a nurse and a hospital manager for 2 months, working directly with the sick and dying. Girard was a critic of the clergy and Christianity, and those ships he owned, he named them after thinkers like Voltaire. Not bad, better than Queen Mary. And he left his entire estate, valued at $7.5 million, to charity. He was considered at the time he died to be the wealthiest man in America in 1831. He gave money all his life. He earned it fabulously and gave it away open-handedly. He willed more than $5 million for the construction and endowment of a college for orphans, instructing that there should be no sectarian control or instructions. Let me read from his bequest. I enjoin and his bequest. I should back up here and say his bequest for the endowment that started this college. Join and require that no ecclesiastic, missionary, or minister of any sect whatever shall ever hold or exercise any station or duty whatever in the said college, nor shall any such person ever be admitted for any purpose or as a visitor within the premises appropriated to the purpose of the said college. My desire is that all instructors and teachers in the college shall take pains to instill into the minds of the scholars the purest principles of morality, so that, on their entrance into active life, they may, from inclination and habit, evince benevolence toward their fellow creatures, and a love of truth, sobriety, and industry, adopting at the same time such religious tenets as their matured reason may enable them to prefer. His will stipulated that ecclesiastics, missionaries, and ministers of any sect whatsoever are forbidden to enter the school. I love it. Subsequently, the Girard's provisions were shamefully violated because the college came under Christian supervision later on, but he tried. And I wish it had succeeded. On May 20th, in 1806, John Stuart Mill was born. And John Stuart Mill is one of the foremost thinkers of the 19th century, whose thought influences American politics even today. The conservatives, the Republicans, venerate him as almost as a saint, but even liberals and Democrats subscribe to Mill's idea about liberty. As a young man, he met Jeremy Bentham, who's also a philosopher, and he became a champion of individual liberty. Mill advanced an idea called utilitarianism, a philosophy advocating the role of government, that the role of government is to create the greatest amount of good for the least evil. He advanced and popularized such ideals as social and sexual equality, the public ownership of natural resources, and political liberty. These ideas, as I said a moment ago, these ideas exist, these have come down today. Even the liberals on the left, espouse his ideas of social and sexual equality and public ownership of resources. The conservatives and even the libertarians on the right hew to his ideas of political liberty, and they both intermingle. Maybe one of the most important thinkers ever to come around in Western civilization. By the way, he was a child prodigy. He later in life said he could never remember a time when he could not read Greek. He was reading it by the age of 3. His father, he said, impressed upon me from the first that the manner in which the world came into existence was a subject on which nothing was known, that the question, who made me, cannot be answered, because we have no experience or authentic information from which to answer it, and that any question only throws the difficulty a step further back, since the question immediately presents itself, who made God? In his teens, he wrote a defense of the skeptic Richard Carlile, who was jailed for 6 years for blasphemy. And Mill became a part of the group that called themselves the philosophical radicals. He wrote The Principles of Political Economy, On Liberty, Utilitarianism, and another book, The Subjection of Women, the latter book influenced by his wife, Harriet Hardy. Let's see what else we have. On Liberty, which he had dedicated to his wife, rejected the idea of ethics predicated on obedience or the crushing of individuality, whether by, quote, enforcing the will of God or on injunctions of men. Christianity, he said, is essentially a doctrine of passive obedience. It inculcates submission to all authorities found established. 3 essays of Mill's on religion were published posthumously. In them, he hints that he'd adopted a deistic, not an atheist, belief in what he termed a limited liability God, which surprised his free-thinking friends. But at the same time, he strongly repudiated miracles and dogma, and he wrote in The Utility of Religion in 1874 that belief in the supernatural cannot be considered to be any longer required. A large proportion of the noblest and most valuable teaching he wrote On Liberty has been the work not only of men who did not know, but of men who knew and rejected the Christian faith. A little earlier in atheist history, in fact, in 1688, Alexander Pope was born on May 21st. One of the finest poets the English language has ever known. He was born in England, educated in Catholic schools, and unfortunately contracted tuberculosis of the spine, which made him a hunchback with an adult height of only 4'6". But despite his health problems. He was a published poet by the time he was in his teens, and he became one of the most respected and certainly most popular poets of Great Britain. He was a deist and a poet of the Enlightenment. His most famous couplet is, "Know then thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man." That little couplet is on the cover of the Secular Humanist Society of New York's basic pamphlet, which I hope many of you will read. But Pope practiced professed his deism and his Enlightenment beliefs throughout his life. "A slave to no sect," he said, "who takes no private road, but looks through nature and up to nature's God." He wrote the universal prayer, in fact, as a matter, "What conscience dictates to be done or warns me not to do, this teach me more than hell to shun, that more than heaven pursue." In other words, do right. Don't tell me about heaven and hell. Just let me obey my conscience. Pope has contributed some of the best-known phrases in the English language. He is the one who coined the phrase to damn with faint praise. Also that a little learning is a dangerous thing. And also that to err is human, to forgive divine. But Pope didn't have much faith in the divine. Alexander Pope, free thinker, deist, and not quite an atheist, but certainly a man with an honored place in the history of atheism. Academy Award winner Henry Fonda who was born on May 16th in 1905, was certainly not a flag-waving, parade-leading atheist, but a very decided political liberal and leftist who became father to a couple more political liberals and leftists, although Jane is swerving out to the right and has become a born-again recently. Years ago, she said, she wrote in her own autobiography, "My father was an agnostic." Through all his years, Fonda espoused liberal causes, and he wrote in his own, by Howard Teichman, "There has never been any renunciation of religion on my part, but like so many people, it was a gradual fading away." Henry Fonda has faded away from he certainly is remembered, and an atheist, well, a free thinker in history. This has been This Week in History, and we have looked at Henry Fonda, of course, and Alexander Pope, and John Stuart Mill, Lorraine Hansberry, and most famously Bertrand Russell. I hope you'll be with us again next week when we will look at such notables as G.A. Wells, Margaret Fuller, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Isadora Duncan, Mikhail Bakunin, and my favorite poet, my favorite American poet, Walt Whitman. We will be right back here at the same time on the same channel next week, and I hope you'll join us. Looking forward to seeing you then. I'm John Rafferty. This has been Atheist History Week. Good night.
Wherever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation, at least not just. We are also a Jewish nation, a Muslim nation, and a Buddhist nation, and a Hindu nation, and a nation of non-believers.
I want you to know something. This is sincere. I want you to know, when it comes to believing in God, I really tried. I really tried. I tried to believe that there is a God who created each of us in his own image and likeness, loves us very much, and keeps a close eye on things. I really tried to believe that, but I got to tell you, the longer you live, the more you look around, the more you realize something is wrong here. War, disease, death, destruction, hunger, filth, poverty, torture, crime, corruption, and the ice-capades. Something is definitely wrong. This is not good work. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed. Results like these do not belong on the resume of a supreme being. Pimp with a bad attitude. And just between you and me, in any decently run universe, this guy would have been out on his all-powerful ass a long time ago. And by the way, I say this guy because I firmly believe, looking at these results, that if there is a God, it has to be a man. No woman